Hey everyone, and welcome to this presentation dealing with Chapter 10, Designing and Conducting Your Formative Evaluation. The focus on this chapter is all about the evaluation side. You're going to be conducting a formative evaluation, and you want to make sure what you create is good. It doesn't have errors and it doesn't have flaws. So it's sort of at this point where you're going to test out what you did, or you should have tested out what you did, and see what works or what doesn't work. So more or less what we'll be focusing on in this chapter is we'll talk about the purpose of the evaluation. We'll look at the instruments that are used in the evaluation process. We'll come up with a plan, and then how do you collect your data? These are all things that are beneficial to the overall design process. You're going to want to make sure things work before you roll it out large scale. So you want to emphasize the collection and the analysis of data, and you want to focus on how this will impact instruction. That's the big idea. How does it impact instruction? Specifically, the focus is on how you can revise the instruction before the final version. So before you get to the end of the road, you got to be able to fix it up. So the summative evaluation allows you to compare what you've created in similar forms of instruction. Now, there are three phases of formative evaluation. In phase one, you're working one-on-one with individual learners to obtain data to revise what you've created, your instruction. Then you'll have a small group evaluation, which is comprised of between 8 and 20 learners who represent the target population. That's who you'd probably be pulling from, depending on how many people you're instructing. And then the field trial. In the field trial, you're testing out the resources in a real-world setting. So those are the three phases. Now, it's important to think about how you're going to evaluate the instructional strategy. It's the foundation of what you created. So how are you going to do this? What should you analyze? You could create a matrix maybe that lists the components of the instructional strategy along one side, and maybe the areas of each question about the instruction on the other. But you need to think about how you're going to get this information. You don't want to have too much data. You don't want to have too little data. So you got to get it just right, and that's the tricky thing about this. So the next slides are sort of things to think about. First off, are the materials that you're creating, are they appropriate? Are they appropriate to the type of learning outcomes that you have? Do the materials include adequate instruction on the skills and the subordinate skills? Are they logically presented? Are the materials clear and understood by the target audience? Is it designed for the right level of learner? What's the motivational value of the materials? Is it going to hold someone's attention, or is it going to be boring? Don't think these PowerPoints, by the way. They're exciting. Can the materials be managed efficiently in a manner that they're mediated, that they're designed to be in? So these are sort of the things that Dick, and Carrie talk about, and you'll want to consider, and I'm sure you've read a little more into them in this chapter already. What types of data not to collect? Sorry about that. You might want to have pre and post test information. That would be good. Attitude questionnaires. Learners can reveal what they had difficulty with, whether they agreed with something, disagreed. You might want to know how long it took for the learner to complete the task. You might want to see what the subject matter expert thinks. Check with them. They know what they should be doing. Is it appropriate? Is it accurate? And then maybe check with the manager or supervisor. Who's the person that's actually going to roll this stuff out? They're going to be in contact with the material. Does it look good to them? These are the types of data to collect. When it comes to reviewing the data, it's probably a good idea to use a subject matter expert. That's the person who's helping with your project. They can see the big picture maybe that you're not getting, and they'll tell you if stuff is working or not. Their input's important when it comes to the data, along with the learning specialists. These are people who are familiar with the population. They know what's going on. the colleagues you might have, or of the subject matter expert, but these are just the people that might be good to go to and have that bond with, which you probably have your subject matter expert that you've been working with already. Working one-on-one with the learners is important. In the three phases of the evaluation, you will first want to work one-on-one with 3 or more individual learners. You're going to want to get their perspective on things. You're going to want to see if the lesson was clear. Is the message clear to the target audience? What's the impact of it? Is it worthwhile? Is it feasible? How feasible is the instruction based on how much time and resources you have? So when you're selecting these learners, I would probably try to find some that are in the high, medium, and low range, but they represent the population. It doesn't have to be random. It's not a random sample, but you'll have to kind of cherry pick that and figure out what's best. Now, okay, so let's say you have this learner in the room. What do you do with them? What do you do with the learner? Basically, you want them to critique the instruction. Let the person know who's helping know what they're doing. Tell them to pick it apart a little bit, and that might be hard from the student perspective, the learner perspective, to pick it apart, but hopefully you can build that relationship. If the learning isn't occurring, it might not be, and it probably isn't the learner's fault. I mean, you got to look at what's been created. You got to check the instruction, and this is what the learner is going to help you do. You got to be prepared for negative comments. They might not always have positive things to say, so be ready for that. When you're working with the learner, you should be sitting with them as they do the instruction. So it's an interactive process. Don't just say, "Here, do this," and walk away. You want to be there with them and kind of reading along silently as they're doing it. Kind of just keep up with them and see where they're having these mental roadblocks or hurdles, and take it from there. Eventually, you're going to have a small group assessment, a small group evaluation, and that from there you're going to have 2 goals. First off, you'll want to determine the effectiveness of changes done after the one-on-one time. So you met with the person, you made some changes. Okay, so now let's roll it out to a small group. You'll also want to determine whether the learners can use the instruction without interacting with the instructor. So at this point, you're probably going to let them work independently. You're not going to sit and stare at them reading question by question at their pace. So the learners, it's important to select the right population. You're probably going to want to have 8 to 20 this time. It's probably ideal. You don't want to have too much or too little data. So just depending on how big of a project you have, 8 to 20 will be good. You'll want to think about the procedures that you went through. This is different than the one-on-one. You're not going to be sitting down with them, basically. You'll explain what you're doing, say you want feedback, and then deliver it like it was in finished form, the instruction. You'll want to give some sort of attitudinal questionnaire to get some ideas on how they did. And this is going to allow to see what the person thinks, the learner thinks about the instruction. Was it interesting? Was it relevant? Did they feel the test objectives matched the assessment? And things like that. You're going to want to think about the data summary piece and analysis. This is the quantitative and qualitative data you could collect. You should be analyzing that. This could be coming from the questionnaires. It could be coming from the results on the test. Wow, everybody seemed to miss question 8. Well, maybe it's the test, not the learner. And then the outcomes. Refinements and modifications that are necessary should also be addressed at this stage. So what do you want to fix from here? Okay. What is going to happen next is I'm just looking at the slide, it doesn't fit here. The field trial. You're going to want to think about the final stage of formative evaluation. Where are you going to try out this instruction? You need to think about that. You might not be doing it in the same location as where you're going to roll it out. It may or may not be possible. Is it done? Is it in the right environment? Is it done properly and good for the setting you want to roll it out in? You have to think this through a little bit. And in this field trial phase, you'll probably want to get about 30 learners, I would imagine. That would be typical of the population that you'll be designing the instruction for. This final rollout is basically your chance to see what works or what doesn't work. So, I mean, it's sort of your last ditch effort here to make sure everything is where you want it to be. And finally, this is a high-tech shot here. Let's look at some of the questions, data sources, and data gathering methods for performance context evaluation. So this is coming from in my book, chart 10-3 or table 10-3. And this is how the things you could ask, the data sources you would get them from, and then the methods of interviewing or giving questionnaires and so on. So in a nutshell, these are the steps, the 3 big steps of conducting a formative evaluation. This is before you do the final rollout here. So I hope this helped, and let me know if you have any questions. Yeah, I'll talk to you soon.